the question of documenting identity. So yesterday I had my consult uh, for change of gender markers, and some people start at the place of the birth certificate, but across this country there are different forms of legislation that may or may not permit that merely on the basis of you receiving transition care. Um, some states require that it go before a gender recognition board and that surgery be part of it, particularly bottom surgery. What does this mean for a lot of trans people? It means that they can't make any amendments to their sex on their birth certificate until such time that they've actually had such surgery, should they go that path. There are two reasons why people, well, at least two, why people may not. The prohibitive expense, some of the health risks involved because it's not a surgery without its risks. Some people are not in the position to have that surgery due to other health conditions, as well as waiting lists, and like that's more than two. But some people also don't wish to have bottom surgery. They don't feel that that would make them more of a man or a woman, and also that it wouldn't be addressing dysphoria. Maybe they don't have a sense of dysphoria linked to down below. I can't speak for those individuals. I've always felt like I would like to be completely aligned, legally, physically, socially, and I know that that's a long path, but for practicality's sake and to just make that kind of social legal alignment or realignment, things such as amending documents are really central. Now, not everyone looks at your birth certificate. You don't need to use your birth certificate for every kind of purpose of identification. So you can practically kind of put that to the side. And here in New South Wales, even though there's still pending legislation that doesn't require you to provide evidence of a surgical change, you can actually change your passport by having, I guess, your birth certificate reissued in a new name, even though changing the gender might not be possible until such legislation comes into effect in July, where should you have been born in New South Wales. In its absence, you can merely apply for a new passport after having changed your name, if that's part of your process, and on that basis fill out what's known as a form called B14, which I believe only requires some kind of letter from your doctor to reflect a change in gender, and you can have your passport reissued with your current name and your lived gender. So that's actually quite good, because that allows you to generate some form of ID that can help to build into changes to other forms of ID, such as your driver's license. Medicare apparently is easier. My little hoop to jump through is that I wasn't born in New South Wales, and interestingly enough, in Western Australia there is a similar legislation to abolish what's known as the Gender Recognition Board, so that people aren't tied up in all these forms of bureaucracy, and they can get to the point of changing their gender marker, their sex, on their birth certificate merely by applying to Births, Deaths and Marriages WA. So this is the end point with this kind of legislation. I believe it went before Parliament last year. It was first proposed as a bill in April of last year, but it hasn't yet come into effect. There's often a delay with these things, as there is, I was surprised, with New South Wales. So if you're born in New South Wales, the process will be made much more easier, and there won't be a requirement for surgery to change your gender marker or sex as well, if you want to look at it that way, on your birth certificate. And I believe that WA's legislation was brought in to try to bring WA in line with other states. So there's a bit of a wait time for, you know, the document trail that leads back to the birth certificate, but that doesn't stop any of us in the meantime from changing other documents that for all intents and purposes are those that we will use in everyday life, and starting with the passport. Obviously there's expenses involved in all of this and further waits, but at least it's given me some clarity about it. I suppose having the conversation itself had its emotional challenges because, you know, when we talk about our identities and who we are, it's kind of like, why does it have to be this complicated when this is just who I am? And my aim is not to create situations that lead to confusion or discrimination or just being triggered because it is a bit psychologically triggering to constantly be facing down this name and gender identity that you can't relate to. And the more that you're involved in transition, the less you are going to relate to those markers and foreseeably that name. I've had my name since the mid-90s, so that's not hard in terms of social adjustments, but my documents are still in my former name. So that's the first step, I think, for me. And it would just be easier not to have that jolting experience of having that name called out in pharmacies, for example, when I go and pick up estrogen, because that's embarrassing. And also when you go and have medical tests and, you know, your name's called out and the M's there and scrutiny is applied to you. People, for the most part, are not intrusive, I have to say, but it would just be nice not to have those moments, and just to kind of continue through life with that congruence. Yeah, it's something that as an experience only those of us who go through it can understand the importance. I guess previously I'd heard about people's stories and it was a bit more abstract, but now I am that person implicated and I can see just how it can, you know, kind of jolt you, and how important it is, because it's that last set of hurdles, I guess, because socially people through transition can embrace you. I mean, obviously there's a chance that not everyone will. At least in this country, we don't have a constant bullying going on with in terms of our identity from the government and so on. That's really horrible in regard to trans people and what they're continuing with Trump. And it's really stripping people of their identities, right? And especially since so much in the way of advances were made for people putting into place the changes, that it appears that at least with passports can be reversed now, or there's other legislation to try to impute some kind of fraud and force people to detransition. It's such a sorry state of affairs, and if you're from the US, that's a Texas bill. Not everyone lives in Texas, but if you're living in Texas or other states where there could be roll-on effects, I'm really sorry, and I just want to express my deep felt solidarity for you, and all I can say is this administration will not last forever, and we have to find resources to get through this. I mean, even in my own small way, in thinking about how it wouldn't be possible to, you know, change sex, gender on the birth certificate for now, I had to sort of think, you know, does the state have the ultimate kind of jurisdiction over who I am and who I know myself to be? And the answer is no. But I understand that it creates a lot of obstacles, yeah, and potential for discrimination when these things are taken from you. And suddenly, especially well into transition, there is that, contradiction No one wants to live constantly in cycles of contradiction, and that's really what this is all about. It's much better for us, for our mental health and for our social interactions, and just being able to move a bit more fluidly through the world. It doesn't resolve things in other areas, such as people being discriminated, on the basis of their race. There's obviously a lot more that can go on with discrimination, but like ironing out some areas of the way in which people get ordered into categories, and we're kind of like out of the boxes or reboxed in the wrong ways. It's just really crucial just to sort of have a proper life,